1 year ago, on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, a small group of us from this congregation climbed into Maria Ornelas' van to drive to a vigil in front of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office in downtown Los Angeles. Many of us have spent a lot of time climbing in and out of Maria's van. The long trip to Chula Vista to meet the group going to the Border Justice trip to Tijuana, the drive to Burbank to advocate for immigration reform during the National Day of Dignity and Respect, and then trips to visit immigrant detainees in Adelanto. This time, 1 year ago, we were headed to a vigil to call on President Barack Obama to put a stop to the deportations and to keep families together. It was a sparsely attended event. The media who attended was mostly Spanish-speaking. A few other Unitarian Universalists were there from Canoga Park and Mission Viejo, wearing our Yellow Love t-shirts and carrying signs. I stood with the other speakers behind a makeshift Thanksgiving table. There were pies for eating with coffee afterwards and decorations, the trappings of Thanksgiving. We all know what it looks like. We all know this quintessential image of America. We all know that some are allowed to sit at the table with us and some are not. Dispersed among the speakers were silhouettes of those who would not eat with their families that year for the holiday meal. Reminders of those being held in detention centers by our broken immigration system. A system that sees beds to fill and a quota to make rather than human beings with families to love. We listened to the stories of those separated from loved ones. We prayed, we gave thanks. We lit candles on the makeshift dinner table. We reminded each other that most of us are here because we or our ancestors immigrated here. We gave thanks for being welcomed in this country. We gave thanks for the different gifts and blessings we all bring from our own cultures and traditions that have enriched our life journeys. We lit candles praying for those who are not welcomed. We lit candles in the darkness of our broken immigration system. We lit candles of hope, praying not one more unjust detention or deportation. We called on the president to take courageous action that upholds our values and moves us forward together. We shouted not one more, ni una más detención injusta, ni una más deportación, I can do it, I've shouted it before, deportación injusta, not one more. Ni una más. People of faith, including Unitarian Universalists, have been praying and shouting, not one more, ni una más, from Washington, D.C. to Northern California for many years. Finally, our president heard us. Finally, our president took action. We give thanks this day and every day. In his speech from this past Thursday, the president relied on the standard logic to make his case for reform. We are a nation of immigrants. My fellow Americans, he said, we are and always will be a nation of immigrants. We were strangers once too, and whether our forebears were strangers who crossed the Atlantic or the Pacific or the Rio Grande, we are here only because this country welcomed them in and taught them that to be an American is about something more than what we look like or what our last names are or how we worship. What makes us Americans is our shared commitment to an ideal, that all of us are created equal and all of us have the chance to make our lives what we will. This is the story we tell ourselves as Americans. It leaves out the story of those who did not immigrate here, those who were already here when the first Thanksgiving took place. Unitarian Universalist minister Tom Owen Toll writes, "We tend to romanticize our holy days. We idealize the setting, the characters, and the virtues of the first Thanksgiving because, among other reasons, we're fearful of sullying our American image if we confronted the muddied facts. The facts are so muddied, it is doubtful that the first official Thanksgiving took place in Plymouth. The Spaniards founded the first European city on this part of the continent in 1565, St. Augustine, in what would someday become Florida. Upon landing, the Spanish Catholics celebrated a Thanksgiving Mass, after which they enjoyed a meal with the local natives, the Timucuans. There were probably other similar feasts prior to the one in Plymouth. Other Europeans had been in America prior to the Pilgrims and probably celebrated their arrival with prayers of thanksgiving. The facts are so muddied that we forget, or were never taught, that the Pilgrims built their first shelters on land that had already been cleared by Indians who were no longer there when the Pilgrims arrived. Most had died a few years before from disease brought to them by European fishermen or sailors who traveled regularly to the coast of the New World. The facts are so muddied that even telling the story becomes problematic. The New World was not so new. The Indians weren't Indians. Tom Owen Toll also wrote, "The truth is that human gratitude is a mature human emotion and not readily come by, for the real story of Thanksgiving Day is filled with mixed motives and results, just like our lives." Like the poet W.S. Merwin wrote, "We are saying thank you and waving, dark though it is." We say thank you amidst the muddied facts and the disappointing results. Here's a muddied fact. The descendants of the Wampanoag tribe, the Indians present at what has become known as the first Thanksgiving in Plymouth, they now celebrate a day of mourning instead of our national holiday, calling attention to the genocide and continued oppression of the native people. Here's another muddied fact. The president's actions for immigrants are temporary and insufficient. And another one. Many of us will gather around a Thanksgiving table with a chair made empty by the loss of a loved one or a fractured family. Human gratitude is a mature emotion. We say thank you, dark though it is. We give thanks this day and every day. If gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others, then reverence is the forgotten child. Reverence and gratitude together remind us what a wonder it is to be alive in the first place. These two virtues taken together teach us humility and humbleness. Simply put, Paul Woodruff writes, reverence is the virtue that keeps human beings from trying to act like gods. And for that, we say thank you. Woodruff defines reverence as the well-developed capacity to have the feelings of awe, respect, and shame when these are the right feelings to have. He's talking about healthy shame, not the debilitating kind that depth psychologists identify as what binds us to our past failures. Healthy shame reminds us that as human beings, we are limited. Those who now promise to obstruct the president's executive actions, sue the White House, block his administration's executive and judicial appointments, threaten another shutdown of the government, or even attempt to impeach him demonstrate a lack of reverence. Those who continue to characterize hardworking immigrants as illegal thugs lack reverence. A lack of reverence lies behind violence against women and children, the oppression of our LGBT brothers and sisters, and the continued refusal to acknowledge that Black and brown lives matter. A lack of reverence also shows up in our daily attempts to bully and sabotage in our own families, our workplaces, and even sometimes in our congregations. Anytime we fool ourselves into thinking we are more important than we really are, we can temper that feeling with the virtue of reverence. Anytime we think we are the only ones who understand the truth in a situation, we can remind ourselves of our own limits by being willing to admit what we don't know. Struck with awe and respect for how life continues to unfold without our help, the hard shell of our perfection breaks open, revealing the soft underbelly of reverence. Woodruff urges us to find reverence in all sorts of places, including the most mundane. The local election, the family dinner, the voting booth, and we can practice the virtue of reverence at a meeting. I like this because I go to a lot of meetings. Meetings are rituals, according to Woodruff, and the benefits of ritual are rarely tangible. He writes, if you do not realize that a meeting is a ritual because you hate ritual, and so you pass over its ritual aspects, then your meeting will yield no benefit at all. Consider the congregational meeting of a Unitarian Universalist church. We start by lighting the chalice and by reading opening words, both rituals that create a feeling of reverence for the process and the participants. We value the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process, using established rules to direct the discussion. At the end of our reverent ritual, all issues are solved, and so there is nothing more to discuss in the parking lot afterwards when you get in your cars to go home. Not so, says Woodruff. Differences always remain in any human organization, he says. Meetings help us to continue as a congregational body, even as our differences remain unresolved. Consider the atheism versus theism debate that we've been examining in worship the past few weeks. If you look at our 6 sources more closely, you will notice the similarities between our first source and our 5th source. The first, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. The 5th, humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. The first source makes room for the divine, for deity, for God. The 5th source does not. Yet, within the ritualized meeting of the worship service, both views can be present. As Unitarian Universalists, the rituals of our worship, our meetings, and our small groups are wide enough to contain our differences. When Prop 8 and DOMA were struck down by the Supreme Court, we held a party here in this sanctuary, So many of you had worked countless hours for marriage equality. And when it was finally a permanent reality here in California, we celebrated. We aren't celebrating now because some of us believe that the president's actions don't go far enough. Faith communities will continue our struggle for the rights of all immigrants because the president's actions are temporary and insufficient. We are concerned about further militarized border security, protections for asylum seekers, and the recognition of LGBT family relationships. People of faith will continue in the struggle alongside immigrants and other justice seekers. Reverence is the virtue that teaches us to respect all human beings. Gratitude, the parent of all virtues, can be a permanent way of being in the universe. Reverence and gratitude can help us walk together through the complex justice issues of our time. We are in the season of rituals, a perfect time to practice gratitude and reverence. Consider the ritual of the shared meal. Notice who is present and who is not. What words you say as you light the candles, share the pies, tell the stories. Rituals without reverence and gratitude are empty, mere trappings without substance. Rituals without reverence and gratitude don't mean much until you stand in that ritual, giving it meaning. As you enter the coming holidays and holy days, slow down. Stand within these rituals with awe and thanksgiving. Acknowledge the muddied facts of your rich and complex life. Remember that human gratitude is a mature human emotion. We say thank you, dark though it is. We give thanks this day and every day. With gratitude and reverence, we celebrate these holy days, and we are transformed. May it be so, and amen. And as just one more brief moment to go back into that feeling of meditation, closing your eyes just briefly, remembering the feeling of giving thanks, remembering that you don't have to wait until Thursday. You can start now and every day, starting and ending each day. Arms held wide open, willing to receive what life gives you, willing to say thank you for it all. And please now join in the words to extinguish the chalice, which are found printed in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We are the Caneo Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Our mission is to nurture spiritually courageous people who transform the world through justice and compassion. Like us on Facebook, check out our website at CVUUF.org, or come visit us. See you soon!